Hello and welcome. You found your way to a soft, quiet corner of history. Tonight we're going to travel, slowly, gently, back through time. Not to visit kings or knights in shining armor, but to visit the simpler, rougher, slower world of everyday medieval life. This isn't a tale of battles or castles. It's a story of scratchy blankets, muddy shoes, and cold porridge. Of little windows, smoky air, and chores that never ended. It's a sleepy walk through a world that wasn't always kind, but was filled with the gentle rhythm of sunrises, church bells, and small tired joys. So breathe slowly, let your thoughts soften, and allow yourself to drift into the slow and steady world of the Middle Ages. Let's begin just before dawn. Ambient sounds, gentle wind across thatched rooftops, distant church bell, soft wooden creaks. It is not yet light outside. The sky above your village is still a deep gray, smeared with the last of the night's stars. And yet you're awake. You didn't need an alarm clock. Your body knows, like the cows in the byre or the hens in the yard, that it is time. You stretch under the woolen blanket, stiff from the chill. It's heavy, scratchy, and smells faintly of lanolin. Beneath it is a straw mattress, lumpy in all the wrong places, laid out over coarse wooden boards that creak as you shift. There is no such thing as sleeping in. The fire has gone out in the hearth. Your breath clouds faintly in the air. There is no glass in the window, only shutters. And no chimney, just a hole in the roof where the smoke drifts out. You pull your tunic back on, stiff from yesterday's sweat, and fasten it with a simple cord. You step outside barefoot into the cold earth. And another day begins. Ambient sounds, a soft rooster call, wooden shutters creaking open, distant clink of meta-breakfast is simple, and never warm. If you're lucky, someone in the household stirred the embers back to life. More often, you eat cold leftovers from yesterday's pot. There's a bit of barley porridge, dense, thick, and gray. It clings to the wooden spoon like glue. Sometimes there's a scrap of cheese hard as stone. Rarely is there anything sweet. Honey is for the abbey, sugar doesn't exist. You sit on a bench near the hearth. The stool rocks, the legs are uneven. A pot of rainwater stands in the corner, filled yesterday from the stream. You scoop a cupful and drink, earthy, faintly cloudy, but it's clean enough. Your hands are always cold. They're cracked at the knuckles, calloused at the palms. If it's winter, they burn from the wind. If it's summer, they blister from the fields. You chew slowly. There is no hurry. Only the next thing that must be done. Ambient sounds, wooden spoon scraping a clay bowl, low crackling as someone stirs the hearth, faint wind through shutters. Every day, no matter the season, you need wood. Without it, the fire dies. Without fire, you don't eat, you don't wash, you don't warm your feet. And so someone, maybe you, goes out with a basket to search the frost-bitten edges of the woods, or the far side of the hedgerow, for anything dry enough to burn. Twigs mostly, maybe some moss, a fallen branch if you're lucky. Your boots are thick leather, but they leak. They always leak. Your breath puffs in the cold air as you walk, and the hem of your tunic drags through the frost. You step quietly. The birds are just starting to sing. You don't talk. There's no one around to talk to. Just you, the rustle of the leaves, and the steady hush of the wind over the fields. You return, basket heavy on your back. The wood is wet. It will have to sit by the hearth to dry. But at least you have something. Ambient sounds, quiet wind through bare trees, crunch of boots on frozen grass, soft rustling in the distance. There is always something to do. The chickens need feeding. The goat needs milking. The child needs dressing. The floor needs sweeping. Though what you sweep it with, a bundle of sticks, is more suggestion than solution. You mend a tunic with thread pulled from another tunic. You patch a roof tile with mud and prayer. You check the turnips in the cellar, still firm, still edible, still enough. And when it rains, the roof leaks. So you place a wooden bowl underneath. You move your bedroll. And you go back to what you were doing. Life is never still, but it is slow. And that slowness is something like peace. The sound of the animals in the yard, the clink of the pail, the drip of water through the ceiling, and in the distance, the steady toll of the church bell, calling not with urgency but with rhythm, marking time for a world with no clocks. Ambient sounds, hens softly clucking, pail clinking on well stone, distant church bell tolling gently, breeze through the thatch. By mid-morning, the ground outside is no longer frozen. The frost has melted into thick, sticky mud that clings to your shoes and never lets go. There are no stone streets here, no cobbled paths. Just earth trampled by feet, hooves, and wheels. Every corner of the village squelches underfoot. Even inside your home, the floor is damp. You try to sweep it, you lay rushes down. But the rushes grow soggy and begin to rot. Children run barefoot through puddles. Their feet are red and raw but used to it. A dog shakes water from its coat near the door. You wipe your hands on your apron, but it's already stained from chores. The smell of the village lingers in the air. Not foul exactly, just ever-present, smoke, damp wool, manure and earth. It is the smell of life here. You notice it less when you're tired. And you're always tired. You try to keep the mud out. You always fail. But that doesn't matter. Everything will be cleaned again tomorrow. And the next day. And the next. Ambient sounds, soft squelch of mud underfoot, distant dog barking, water dripping steadily from a roof eave. There's no tap to turn. No well in your own backyard. If you want water, you walk. The village has a common well, maybe two. Or, if you're on the outskirts, you fetch it from a stream. You carry a bucket on either side, wooden, heavy, sloshing. By the time you return, water has spilled onto your skirt. And you're already thinking of your next trip. Water is life. You use it to cook, to wash, to rinse the baby's cloths. To soak grain, to soften clay, to scrub the table. But it never feels like enough. It's always cloudy. Even when boiled, it carries the taste of smoke. The buckets creak as you set them down. You ladle a bit into the pot over the hearth. And you drink slowly, even though you are thirsty. Tomorrow, you'll carry it again. Ambient sounds, distant bucket sloshing, soft splash of water into a clay basin, creaking yoke and rope from a well. Midday is a time for pause. But not rest. There's too much to do. Lunch is not a feast. It's often bread hard as bark. You might soak it in a little broth, if you saved some from the night before. Or perhaps it's a boiled turnip, seasoned with nothing but heat. You eat in silence. There is no fork, only fingers, a wooden spoon and a dull knife. You share from one dish. No one eats alone. The table is narrow, uneven, and slick with old wax. If there is cheese, it is dry and sharp. If there is ale, it is weak and sour, safer than the water. If there is meat, well, there rarely is. And still, you are grateful. Your stomach is full enough. There is work to be done. And winter is always coming. Ambient sounds, quiet spoons scraping against wood, fire softly crickling, low murmur of voices in the shadow of the hut, near the edge of the byre. A small pile of logs waits to be split. You take up the axe, dull, heavy, with a crack in the handle, and set to work. You split not for today's fire but for tomorrow's. This morning's haul is still too damp, so the logs from last week must be used now. The thud of the axe is steady, rhythmic, calming in its repetition. You strike, you reset, you strike again. The sun is higher now, peeking through the clouds. Steam rises from the logs as you work. Your hands are blistered, but familiar with the ache. You glance at the sky. It is always either raining or about to rain. The wood splits with a satisfying pop. You carry each piece inside and stack it by the hearth. Your reward is not praise, but a small moment of warmth later that night. Ambient sounds, steady axe striking wood, bird calls in distance, rustle of drying leaves in breeze. Not all work requires sweat. Some tasks ask only for time and patience. You sit on a stool by the door. Needle in hand, thread unraveled from an old garment. You patch the hole in your only cloak. A hole torn last week, crawling under the cart. The fabric is rough and the needle is blunt. You prick your finger now and then. But the rhythm is soothing. Push, pull, knot. Snip the end with your teeth. Around you, the world keeps moving. Children call in the distance. A cart rumbles past. The church bell rings again. You finish the repair, sigh, and fold the cloak across your knees. The wind moves the curtain, and you smell the fire from the next house. You close your eyes for just a second. Ambient sounds, thread softly drawn through cloth, distant cartwheels, gentle village bustle. This is the slowest part of the day. The sun is still high. But the energy of morning has faded. You've done much, but there is still more to do. And yet, for a moment, you stop. You sit by the door, cloak in your lap, and let the stillness settle around you. The chickens have wandered to the edge of the lane. The dog naps near the warm stone wall. Even the flies seem tired. The wind carries the smell of baking bread from a neighbor's oven. You take a deep breath. It smells like warmth and grain and a little smoke. A bee hums past your ear. You don't swat it away. It's just passing through. And for just a few minutes, nothing hurts, nothing breaks, nothing spills. The Middle Ages, for all their hardship, have these small, beautiful pauses. You hold them close, because dusk is coming. Ambient sounds, low ambient wind, faint buzzing of bees, soft rustle of leaves in the trees. There were no carriages for you. No horses, no wheels, unless you were wealthy or delivering something important. For most people, if you needed to get somewhere, you walked. To the market, to the church, to the manor if summoned, to the next village if something was missing, or simply out to the edge of the fields to check on what's yours. The roads are not paved. They are narrow, rutted, and full of rocks. In winter, they're frozen solid. In spring, they turn to soup. In autumn, the leaves cover puddles until you're ankle-deep in mud before you notice. You walk slowly, head down. You wear the same boots you've worn for years. You stuff them with straw to keep the water out. You walk anyway, because that's what everyone does. And the road winds, and rises, and carries you past hedgerows, sheep pens, and crooked oak trees. And though your feet hurt and your back aches, you keep going. Because the bell has rung, and it's time to gather. Ambient sounds, quiet footfalls on gravel, breeze rustling leaves, distant tolling church bell. You don't own a clock. No one you know does. But you always know what time it is. Because the bell tells you. It rings in the morning. It rings for mass. It rings for prayer. It rings for news. It rings to mark death, birth, storm, and celebration. It tolls slowly, with a sound that lingers in the cold air. A deep, solemn note that reaches your bones. It tells you when to rise, when to break, when to stop. The bell is in the heart of the village, atop the stone church, swaying gently in its wooden tower. Children stop when they hear it. So do animals. Even the dog lifts its head and listens. You hear it as you walk the long road, and though your feet ache, the bell is familiar, and its voice is soft. Ambient sounds, distant deep bell ringing slowly, faint echo off stone, breeze through dry grass. You've gathered what little you can spare. A basket of dried herbs, a spool of woolen thread, a few eggs, and maybe a scrap of linen. It isn't much, but it's something, and in return, maybe you'll find what you need. At the market the sounds are soft, not bustling. It's not like a city fair. It's a few stalls under a cloth canopy, a wooden cart selling salted fish, a woman offering carved spoons, a man with leeks, dirt still clinging to their roots. There are no coins exchanged, not usually. Most trade is barter. You give thread, you get onions. You offer eggs, you receive a bit of beeswax. Everyone here is tired, but kind. The laughter is quiet, the greetings warm. You share what you can and hope you return home with more than what you brought. You leave with 3 turnips, a candle stub, and a story. Not a bad day. Ambient sounds, low chatter, clinking of small items, creaking cartwheels, hens clucking nearby. You feel it now, the ache. Blisters on your heels, calluses thick like bark. Your toes bend stiffly inside your boots. No arch support, no cushion, just skin, leather, and earth. You sit on a low wall near the chapel and take your boot off. Steam rises faintly in the cold air. The sole is splitting. You'll stitch it tonight. You rub your foot with your palm. It's sore, but it's yours. You earned it. Nearby, another man leans against the same wall. He's older. His feet are bare. You both nod. No words, just a shared pause. Because walking is how you move, and herding is part of the price. Ambient sounds, birds fluttering, quiet sighs, light breeze, footsteps on stone. The sun is low now. Shadows stretch long across the path. The bell will ring again soon. You rise slowly from your resting place, tuck your things into your basket, and begin the walk home. The road you came by is still muddy, but somehow softer in the evening light. The trees whisper as the breeze picks up. You pass a field where sheep settle for the night. One looks up at you, blinks slowly, and lowers its head again. You adjust your cloak around your shoulders. The air smells of evening, a mix of cooking fires, cool stone, and distant wood smoke. Your house is just ahead, and even though it's cold, drafty, and dark, it is your home. And home is enough. Ambient sounds, wind through trees, sheep gently baaing, crackle of distant fire, soft footsteps as the sun disappears behind the trees. And the village sinks into evening shadow. You step inside your home once again. It is dim, even in summer, even darker in winter. The fire has burned low, so you kneel beside it and feed it gently. A twist of dry moss, a few finger-width sticks, a breath to stir the spark. The ember catches. It glows, then grows. The hearth is the heart of the home. There is no other heat, No lamp brighter than this gentle flicker. This is where you warm your hands, dry your socks, heat your food. This is where you gather when the world outside becomes too cold to bear. You sit beside the flames. They dance on the stone. You watch them in silence. And outside, the night softly falls. Ambient sounds, soft crackling fire, wind brushing against thatch, faint settling of wood beams in the roof. Dinner is humble, just as every meal is. A pot of broth, left simmering all afternoon if there was enough fuel. Root vegetables boiled soft. A scrap of yesterday's bread dipped to soften it. Everyone eats from the same pot. You pass the spoon back and forth. Children slurp quietly. The baby, if there is one, drinks warm milk from a horn. There is no dining table, just the stool by the hearth, and a few flat stones worn smooth from years of use. The fire glows against your faces. It makes you look warmer than you feel. You are hungry always, but tonight you feel full enough. And that is something to be grateful for. Ambient sounds, quiet clink of wooden spoon on bowl, soft slurps, gentle fire pop, faint hum of evening insects. After the meal, there is no entertainment. No books, no letters, no music, unless someone hums. And sometimes someone does. But most often it's work. The same as always. A shirt to mend, cord to twist, wool to card, a fishnet to repair. Your fingers work slowly in the fire's glow. Not hurried, just steady. The chores never end, but they don't rush either. Your eyes squint in the dimness. You stitch without looking. The needle slides through cloth. And you feel the familiar roughness beneath your fingertips. It is quiet, except for the fire. You are surrounded by people, but no one speaks. You work, and you rest. At the same time. Ambient sounds, fire crackle, occasional soft thread pull, distant owl hoot. There is no set bedtime. There is just the fire fading, the work ending, the body slowing down. When the light goes, so do you. You spread your straw mattress close to the hearth. You wrap yourself in the same wool cloak you wore all day. There is no fresh blanket. There is no privacy. Everyone sleeps in the same room. Your sibling curls beside you. A parent coughs once, then settles. The dog nestles by your feet, sharing what warmth it can. The sounds are soft. A creak from the roof. A log popping in the fire. Breathing deep and slow. Your body is sore, but your mind is tired, and your eyes fall closed before you even realize it. Ambient sounds, low breathing, wood creaking, fire crackling, night wind brushing through cracks in the wall outside. The village sleeps. The wind brushes against the rooftops. The hens are quiet. The sheep curl beneath the eaves, and only the stars keep watch. The moon spills silver light across the thatch. No lanterns, no glow, just starlight and shadow. Inside you stir once, shift beneath the weight of your cloak, and settle again. It is cold, yes, and hard, and simple. But here, in the quiet of the fire's last glow, in the gentle breath of those beside you, there is a stillness. That might just be peace. Ambient sounds, soft night wind, distant owl, occasional roof creak, quiet breathing. The rooster crows, and morning returns without much ceremony. Not a grand sunrise, just a dull silver light pressing through the thatch. The world outside is wrapped in fog, not heavy but soft, a kind of ghostly breath that settles over the fields. You rise slowly, rubbing the cold from your arms. Your feet find the chill floor. The hearth has gone cold again. The dog stretches. The chickens shuffle near the door. And the first thought on your mind isn't poetry or purpose, just the need to begin again. Another day. The same day, repeated. Ambient sounds, soft morning wind, distant rooster, wood creaking under feet. The rhythm of medieval life didn't vary much. Once you're up, you work. No decisions to make. No long list to manage. Just the same tasks. In the same order. In the same way. You might chop wood. Fetch water. Knead bread. Carry hay. Mend fences. Sometimes you walk to another field. Or visit someone for wool or milk or news. But mostly, you live in a loop. And the loop is quiet. There is a comfort in this, if not joy. The mind stills when the body knows what to do. Ambient sounds, axe striking wood, bucket sloshing, distant cow low, quiet footfalls on dirt laundry. Harvesting, weaving, grinding grain, feeding livestock. There was no end to chores. They rotated gently like seasons. No one had a day off. If it was summer, you harvested. If it was winter, you repaired tools. If it was rainy, you spun wool indoors. There was always something to fix, and something broken just behind it. Even the tools needed constant care. Wood warped in rain, iron dulled in cold. You worked not to get ahead, but just to stay where you were. And yet, there was a rhythm in it, a soft, humble pattern, like weaving a basket of time. Ambient sounds, creak of hand loom, broom brushing floor, repetitive grind of stone mill even in the hardest lives. The sun still shone sometimes. A warm afternoon, a breeze across the barley, the way clouds moved slowly over the hills. And in those moments, the villagers would pause, just for a moment, to drink water, wipe sweat from their brow, or sit on a fence post and say nothing at all. Time felt slower. Maybe because the work never stopped, but the moments in between, they stretched gently like lazy shadows. You weren't happy as we know it now, but you weren't unhappy either. Just here. Alive in the world, among the fields and fog. Ambient sounds, breeze in grass, insects buzzing lazily, distant birdsong, soft wind in hedgerow. In the medieval world, pleasure was found in small things. Bread that rose properly, a child's first tooth, the return of a goose, the mending of a broken cup. Festivals were rare, but they were soft spots in the year, moments when life paused, and colors emerged. On feast days, people wore their best, which meant their least worn tunic, and perhaps a ribbon saved for months. There were songs, not professional, not grand, just voices rising in the twilight. There was laughter, soft, tired, grateful. These were not lives of luxury, but they were not without joy. You had to look closely to see it, but it was there. Ambient sounds, distant flute, quiet clapping, birds fluttering from rooftops, and then the year turned. The leaves browned, the snow returned, the fire was rebuilt. And so it went, again, and again, and again. Children grew, elders faded, fields rotated, wool thickened. You marked time not with clocks, but with sky, and wind, and the state of your boots. The same duties, the same discomforts, but a deep, slow understanding of the world. Everything in the village had its place, and you were a part of that place, even if your name never appeared in books. A quiet life, a difficult life, but a life in a medieval home. It was often the corners that told the most honest stories, not the hearth or the door, but the edges where things piled up. A basket half repaired, a spindle lying beside it, slightly frayed, a folded cloth with a mysterious stain, a child's toy carved from scrap wood. There were no shelves for display, no decorations hung for beauty alone. Everything had a purpose, and when it didn't anymore, it lingered anyway, because even useless things were hard to come by. Cottages were small, but the clutter was gentle, the clutter of effort, repair, and reuse. Every object earned its place in the quiet. If you lived in medieval times, you'd come to know a set of odd tools intimately. Not one for every task, but a few used many ways. A curved knife, worn smooth with years of sharpening. A wooden yoke for carrying water. A heavy needle, passed down from your grandmother. And strange iron hooks whose purpose you once had to be shown. Most tools were handmade, often not by a blacksmith, but by a neighbor who had time and a little know-how. There were no manuals. You learned by doing, and over time, the tool molded to your hand, just as your hand changed to hold the tool. You didn't think about it. You just used it, and it worked well enough. There were jobs in the medieval world that no one remembers now. A thatcher who knew how to tuck straw against the wind. A lime burner who made whitewash by watching fire. A reed cutter who timed his work with the tides. These people rarely traveled more than 10 miles in any direction, and yet they shaped the entire feel of the village. You may have known them only by their hands. A burn scar here, a callus there, a way of lifting or turning or holding things, that hinted at years of craft. Even if their names are lost, their knowledge left marks, in walls that stood longer, roofs that didn't leak, pathways that drained in rain. This was a world not built by kings, but by quiet hands doing forgotten work. Most meals in the Middle Ages weren't grand feasts. They were quiet, simple affairs. Porridge in a wooden bowl, bread with whatever was still edible, cabbage boiled again and again. Meat was rare. When it appeared, it was salted tough and shared thinly. People valued fat more than flavor. It gave energy. Spices were a dream from far-off lands. Salt was precious. Honey was prized. The food was filling, but it wasn't a pleasure. Still, you ate with others, around the same fire, with the same cups and spoons. And sometimes, when the wind was calm and the mood gentle, it felt like enough. Life in a medieval town had a certain scent, not foul though it could be, but complex. Hay drying in the loft, smoke from the hearth winding through the beams, wool damp and raw, earthy vegetables stored for winter, leather warming in the sun. There was no perfume, no soap as we know it, just clean linen sometimes, and the honest smell of work. Clothes were washed rarely, bodies less so, but people became used to it. Noses adjusted, and the world smelled like itself. Evening meant smoke, morning meant dew and damp straw, and the changing seasons brought their own invisible presence. Wood rot, moss, flowering trees, salted meat. There was stillness in the medieval world, not because people had free time, but because everything moved slowly. Letters took weeks, if they came at all. Visitors arrived by foot. Work began when the light allowed. No bells told you what to do, except the one in the distant church tower, and even it rang gently, not urgently. No one expected quick answers. No one had a schedule more precise than the sun. And though the work was heavy, and the comforts were few, this slowness created a certain peace. You had space, to think, to walk, to wait. Even if life was hard, it was never rushed. As the sun sank behind low hills and forests, shadows stretched long across stone walls and beaten paths. The clatter of the day softened, not with sudden silence, but with a kind of gradual quiet. In towns, shutters creaked closed. In villages, the smoke from evening fires coiled upward in steady ribbons. Children were called in, not with shouting but with familiarity. A wave, a motion, a nod. The walls of each home, each cottage, seemed to take a long, slow breath. There were no street lamps, no warm hum of electricity, only the orange hush of fading daylight, and the promise that night would fall without ceremony. You didn't need a clock. You knew by the way the light disappeared from the floor. Nightfall in the Middle Ages came early and completely. Once darkness took hold, there was little to push it back. Candles were rare and precious, made from tallow or beeswax. They were saved for reading scripture or aiding the sick. So instead people used firelight. A small hearth, banked with coals, was the heart of the home. It warmed the stew, the stones, and the people. You'd sit near it to mend clothes, to speak softly, or to let your eyes fall half shut. Before bed, embers would be buried under ash, to preserve the fire until morning. A quiet ritual, not spoken aloud, but done every night. There was no switch to flip, only the patient dimming of light and voice. Beds, as we think of them, were a luxury. A peasant might sleep on a straw-filled sack, or on a wooden frame covered in old linen. Children often slept 2 or 3 to a mattress, head to toe, sharing body heat. In wealthier homes, beds had canopies, not for elegance, but to trap warmth. Sheets were seldom washed. Pillows were lumpy, made from rags or feathers. Blankets were thick and coarse, wool dyed in dull browns and grays. And yet sleep came, slowly, with the lowering of voices, and the cooling of the coals. No blue lights, no ticking clocks, only the soft rhythm of breath. Beside you, people in the Middle Ages dreamed like anyone else. But they dreamed differently, because their waking life was different. There were no books to fill your mind before sleep, no headlines, no moving pictures. What you saw by day followed you into your rest. Dreams of harvests too early, of rains that never stopped, of animals talking, or spirits warning. Sleep wasn't uninterrupted. You might wake after a few hours, lie quietly, then fall into a second sleep. And in the stillness, your dreams wove into the wood grain above you, into the cold breath of stone walls, into the soft rustle of straw below. They weren't vivid in color, but they lingered. The silence of the medieval night was never empty. It was filled with the groan of wood, the rustle of rats in the thatch, the creak of rope and beam, sometimes a distant owl, sometimes just your own breathing. And people feared the dark, not with panic, but with respect. Night was when spirits stirred, when illness deepened, when wolves called from woods you'd never walk. But it was also the time for thought, for prayer, for remembering the day in pieces. And though the world was harsh, the dark was yours, to rest in, to breathe in, to float within. Sleep was not always sweet, but it was still sleep. And when the candle finally burned low, when the wick curled into itself and the wax puddled, the room surrendered fully to darkness. One last flicker, then the end. The candle was gone, and the fire, already sleeping under ash, offered no protest. You rolled to your side, the blanket itched, the straw poked, but the weight of day had you. Tomorrow would be the same, and that was enough. The moon turned above unseen, the hens rustled on their perch, and sleep took you, gently, without flourish, into the night that asked nothing of you but rest. In the Middle Ages, time was not carved into minutes and seconds, no wristwatches, no schedules printed in ink. Time was seen in the movement of shadows, in the way your breath fogged in the morning, in the depth of mud on the road, in the tilt of the sun on your floor. Monasteries had bells, yes, but outside their stone walls, the rhythm of life was not counted, but felt. You rose with the light. You worked until the shadow of your doorway reached a certain mark. You paused when your stomach told you, and you rested when the air grew blue. The passage of time was experienced, not measured. Spring didn't arrive with announcements. It crept in quietly. At first it was a shift in the smell of soil, then a certain brightness in the air, the distant sound of water moving again after its winter stillness. Mud clung to boots, lambs were born in hay-strewn corners, and the first green shoots dared to appear, shy but certain. The people too stirred. They planted. They repaired broken tools. They opened shutters more often. But the joy was always cautious. A late frost could ruin everything. Spring was not a promise, only a possibility. Still, in the chill of morning, a soft breeze carried the scent of hope. Summer in the medieval world was not a time of leisure. It was a time of sweat. The days stretched long and hot. Work began at dawn, paused only briefly for bread and water, and resumed until skin was browned and shoulders sore. But it was also the season of abundance. Fields ripened. Herbs bloomed in corners of cottage gardens. Bees fattened their hives. Children played longer. Women dried herbs and prepared stocks for leaner times. And though the labor was endless, it felt necessary, like dancing with the sun itself. Evenings were warm. Nights smelled of hay and dust and distant harvest. It was tiring, but beautiful. Autumn was the Middle Ages' quiet climax, the season of gathering in all that had been sown. Apples were picked carefully, pressed into cider. Grain was stored in sacks, carefully hidden from rats and damp. In forests, mushrooms were hunted, not for flavor, but for survival. The air turned cool again. Evening light shifted to amber, and people moved just a little faster, trying to beat the rains. Autumn festivals were modest, but welcome. Bread was shared, simple songs sung. It was a time of looking backward, at what had been done, and forward, toward winter's questions. Winter in the medieval world was not a snow globe dream. It was hunger and cold. It was the ache of joints and the scarcity of light. Work didn't stop, but it slowed. People mended, salted, repaired, tended to animals. Days were short, nights were long. Rooms were small to conserve heat. Families huddled together. Even water had to be coaxed from wells with frozen ropes. But winter also brought stillness, time to speak, to think, to remember those who had not survived last winter. And in monasteries, monks wrote by candlelight, trying to preserve the world for springs yet to come. In the Middle Ages, each year was not new, just another turn of the same wheel. The same fields were tilled, the same prayers said, the same tools passed from hand to hand. Children became adults, and their children followed them. Time moved not forward, but around. There was comfort in the repetition, even if hardship never left. The cold would come again, the grain would ripen again, and the candle would flicker at the same hour in the same room. And people, despite all of it, lived. Quietly, softly, repeatedly. While most people in the Middle Ages toiled in fields, not everyone scratched the soil for their bread. The medieval world, with all its hardship, still had need for many strange and specific tasks, roles we might not imagine today. Some were unpleasant, some were peculiar, some were quietly noble. Each job had its place. woven into the soft tapestry of medieval life, often unnoticed. But someone had to do them, and often someone did without complaint. Let's quietly walk among them now. No need to rush. Among the least envied was the gong farmer. This person's task was deeply unpleasant, but necessary. Their job? To empty the cesspits, to remove the waste that built up beneath the wooden privies and stone latrines. They worked at night, quietly, often alone. Carrying long-handled shovels, they descended into the pits of castles, towns, and manors. The stench was unbearable, but they were paid well, because few others would do what they did. They worked in silence, and when morning came, they were gone, like a shadow. No one spoke of them, but without them, even castles would drown in damp marshes and still ponds. Another figure moved slowly through water. The leech collector. Bare-legged and determined, they walked through the reeds, letting leeches attach to their skin. Once enough had clung to their legs, they'd peel them off and drop them into clay pots. Leeches were used in medicine, believed to balance the body's humors by drawing blood. The job was simple, but risky. Too many bites, too often, and the collector might fall ill. Still, they returned to the water, again and again. No one thanked them, but they carried on. Like so many others, in a world without dentists, pain had one name: the tooth drawer. They were not surgeons, but strong hands with a pair of tongs. No anesthetic, no antiseptic. Just a wooden stool, a grimace, and a scream muffled by cloth. They moved from town to town, pulling rotten teeth, in marketplaces, or beside taverns. People dreaded their arrival, but lined up anyway, because toothache was worse. The job was quick, brutal, and then it was done. The drawer moved on, leaving silence and relief, far from blood and waste. In the cool stone rooms of monasteries, scribes bent over parchment. Hour after hour, word after word, their job to copy. Sacred texts, local records, philosophies of old. They used quills dipped in iron gall ink, each letter precise, each margin aligned. The room smelled of dust and vellum, the only sound, quill scratching parchment. It was lonely work, often done in silence, but it preserved language itself. In those quiet corners, while snow fell outside, the written word was kept alive, by soft hands in the shadows. Even in hard times, there was a need for laughter. And so came the jester, a figure of color in a world of gray. They danced, they juggled, they poked gentle fun at lords, priests, and kings. Their humor kept them alive. Sometimes, in court, their bells jingled softly. In village inns, they sang silly songs. Some were clever, some merely foolish, but all offered a moment of escape. And when their act was done, they bowed quietly and disappeared into the crowd. Laughter did not last long, but for a moment. The world was lighter. Not all strange jobs were unpleasant. Some were simply quiet, forgotten. In a doorway, an old woman wove baskets from reeds. Day after day, her fingers moved over, under, over. No one watched her. No one celebrated her. But the baskets carried bread, held fish, stored herbs. She was part of everything, and yet invisible. When her hands grew stiff, she paused, took a sip of warm water, and then began again. Weaving, and weaving, and weaving. A life of repetition, a life of usefulness, a life softly lived in a world of hardship, where winters were long, and lives were short. The end came often, but not always with fanfare. Many slipped away quietly, in the corner of a low house, or beneath a thatched roof, with only the sounds of a hearth and the breathing of a loved one nearby. Death was not feared, the way we might fear it now. It was simply part of life, as regular as planting, and as inevitable as rain. Most people died where they were born, in the same room, on the same earth. No machines, no alarms, just silence, and the fading glow of one last candle. There were no statues, no names etched in marble. For most people, their legacy was in the hands they held, the bread they baked, the field they tilled, with patience. A grandmother's song, passed to a daughter, a wooden spoon smoothed by time, a fence mended before spring. These were their stories, not in books, but in the habits of those left behind. Even when nothing remained, no gravestone, no document, there was still a mark, impressed softly, in the soil of time. Forgotten by name, but never by their doing. After each goodbye, life continued. Chickens still clucked, children still played in the mud, the blacksmith still hammered, the midwife still hummed. Time did not pause, it moved on, slow and steady, like a cart on a dusty road. Grief was quiet, worn like a cloak, and slowly, over days and seasons, it wore away, thread by thread, until only warmth remained. The rhythm resumed, the seasons turned, and the world went on, with its soft enduring beat in the halls of stone, in noble rooms with tapestries. The end came too. Kings died, queens passed in childbirth, knights fell ill in winter, lords slipped from life, while staring at carved ceilings. And though their funerals might have been grand, their last thoughts were often small. A memory of youth, the sound of water in a fountain, a face long gone. Even for the rich, the end was quiet, a last whisper to a page, a sigh behind velvet curtains. Then stillness. A medieval world was not built to last. Wood rotted, stone cracked, names faded. But the traces remain, in language, in the shape of our tools, in the customs we no longer question. The rhythm of their lives echoes in our own, softly. They whispered their way through history, and in listening to them, in learning gently of their world, we honor them. Not as heroes, not as villains, but as people, as soft, patient people, who lived, and worked, and faded like smoke, from a hearth at dusk. And so now, as your eyes grow heavy, you have walked gently, through their world. A world full of small aches, quiet joys, and slow days. You've seen the fields, the long walks, the cold mornings, the soft ends. You've met the people, who did the strange jobs, kept the hearths warm, and wrote no books, but lived full lives. Now they rest, and so should you. Let their world fade gently into the dark, let the candle grow low, let your thoughts soften. There is no more to know tonight. You have traveled far enough, and now you may sleep. Good night, and may your dreams be warm.